So, Sanjay sir, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, so we'll start in a couple of minutes more.
Sure.
Thank you. Sanjay sir, am I audible, sir?
Yes, we can start.
Audible.
Sir, can we start?
Yes,
We
yes,
can.
yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. So, good evening and warm welcome to everyone. And today we bring you the 25th edition of Antardrishti. As we all know, it is our leadership reflection series that connects all the senior leaders at SAIL with the exemplary minds from the industry who have led transformation in their respective field. For today's discussion, our focus is on HR excellence at Tata Steel. A topic for today is very close to the heart of every organization, which is aiming for sustainable growth, agility, and also people-centric leadership. We say steel industry is driven by operations, but it thrives on the human capital. And HR plays a pivotal role in aligning all the strategies with the business goals. To share the invaluable insights on this topic and this domain, we have are in presence with a senior HR leader who have shaped the people strategy at one of the leading and most admired companies in India and from our industry only. Thank you, sir, for joining us. And it is my great honor to welcome Sanjay Bhimani, sir, former Chief Human Resource Management at Tata Steel, who brings with him over 3 decades of rich experience in HR leadership at Tata Steel, spanning steel, raw materials, and corporate function. Sir has served as a role as HR business partner and also as Center of Excellence roles at Tata Steel various business verticals. While his role as HR business partner, he supported multiple business units to ensure business continuity and improve the employee productivity for different segments of the workforce, including the blue collar. He has also led organization-wide life cycle management, talent strategies, and the design and development of which are very critical HR policies. He was also the driving force behind the HR transformation initiatives such as restructuring, culture shaping, shared services transition, and agile behaviors. His experience also includes merger and acquisitions, visioning HR labs, and bureaucracy buster programs. Post superannuation, Sir continues to guide various organizations as an independent HR consultant on their transformation journey. And today's session is an opportunity for all of us to understand how strategic HR, when executed effectively, becomes a key enabler for the business communication. Sir, we look forward to hearing from you about the Tata Steel journey in building a future-ready workforce and HR transformation initiatives, sir. So without further much ado, sir, I hand over to you and we look forward to hear from you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rajesh ji. I hope I am audible to all of us present here. And thank you so much, SAIL management, for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts. As Rajesh ji rightly mentioned, that I have spent over 3 decades in Tata Steel working in different locations. Condensing that into 40 minutes is not an easy task. So I would be focusing largely on the last 7 to 10 years where actual transformation journey has begun. Tata Steel, and like SAIL or any other organization, keeps evolving based on business requirements. But the last 7 to 10 years of the transformation has been a very exciting experience personally for me. There's challenges which have come about across the industry, the challenges being faced by the industry was totally of a different kind because I have seen HR getting evolved, getting aligned to the business over a period of time. But the changes which have happened in the last 7 to 10 years, not only in Tata Steel but many other organizations, has been quite exciting, and the journey still continues, as people say, right? So let me. I've just stitched up few slides. I'll speak about 30-35 minutes, and I'll leave it for open Q&A. Is that okay with everyone? Okay. I presume it's okay with everyone, right?
Yeah, anyone from participants can say, sir.
Yeah. So I'll just let me go through the slides, and if there is any specific clarification or something, they can always interject. Otherwise, maybe towards the end, we can keep 5-10 minutes. So as I said, I'm going to speak largely on the last 7 to 10 years of my exposure in the corporate function, looking at HR. But obviously, there has been a lot of learnings over the years, working both as the HR business partner as well as the Center of Excellence. So just let me take it to the next slide. Why is the slide not moving? Is the slide moving there?
No, it's not moving.
then share the slides.
Yeah.
Now it is.
Now is it moving?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Sorry. Thank you. So the biggest disclaimer is while HR is the business partner and they continue to associate with the businesses within an organization, the real key drivers are the business leaders who lead different business units. HR would be facilitating, they would be the ears and eyes of the organization, they would be sensitizing, they would be monitoring the progress, but it's actually the business leaders who drive the changes or who have driven the changes in Tata Steel in the last 7 to 10 years during this transformation journey. So we started off with the diagnostic journey of as is and to be. What is it that we are wanting to be and where are we right now? What is our maturity level? What are those critical inputs which are coming from multiple stakeholders? And how do we co-create strategy with the business leadership team to align to future readiness? So that was a very critical part of the entire journey, where we did a very detailed diagnostic, both formally and informally, and getting critical inputs from multiple stakeholders, including the union, including other outside stakeholders. Uh, as I said, the business leaders are the key drivers. The CEO and MD has to set the HR agenda, and he is the chairperson of the HR Council, the governing body, which reviews and monitors the progress of any transformation. And so he did for the HR transformation when we began this journey 7 to 10 years back. Other critical part is, how do we socialize with the larger team because people need to get sensitized. They have to be brought on board. So there is regular MD online, which people are aware, the town halls, which are conducted by the leadership team, not only the MD, but the senior vice presidents also communicating of what the agenda is and where do we want to be, right? And what are those challenges? Various leadership connect, the HR leadership connect, breakfast with MD. So MD meets the youngsters and communicates to them on the changes which we are wanting to bring about on the people space. Other critical part is how do we ensure that any intervention which we bring in HR is linked to some of the key outcomes. So all the HR processes, whatever changes or strategies which we were trying to bring about, we had to ensure that there has to be a proper linkage of all the processes and practices. So there was a lot of work which was done on policy harmonization based on specific business needs, because within Tata Steel also there are specific businesses which are very unique to itself, whether it is raw materials or the new material business. How do we look at performance contracting or the PMS system? How does the KPI gets drilled down both vertically and horizontally so that there is a lot of collaboration in the performance management system? We created a future readiness index of how are we preparing ourselves for the future, what are the cultural changes which we want to bring about, and what kind of gold standards we would like to expect the behaviors to be for the senior leaders, or not even the senior leaders, but the mid managers also, and heavy involvement of employees in the agile way of working, that is the AO projects which we call it. Line managers were handpicked because the business line managers were handpicked and they were made as change champions, while HR was associated along with them, but it was the line business leaders who were championing this transformation journey, and they were trained and sensitized. And many of these people were measured for future leadership roles also, because this was being monitored as part of their involvement and how active they were in driving this entire exercise. So I'm moving to the next slide. So this is the background basis which we started off the transformation journey.
So line managers means did you went just way down the line or up to a certain level?
Sorry, come again. I couldn't get you.
You went to write that line managers as change champions.
Correct. That's right.
So line managers, was it way down the line or up to a certain level?
So it was largely the entry level leadership level, which we call as impact level 3 in Tata Steel.
Okay.
So we started picking up people from there because they were the leaders, they were monitoring group of people in the organization. So that is the frontline leadership level in the organization. So we started picking up people from that level onwards, upwards.
So what is this PMS, performance management system, right?
Performance management system,
Okay.
that's right.
Okay.
So what was the future looking like for Tata Steel, and what are the shortcomings and what changes we wanted to bring out to be future ready. We wanted to be, technology, including digital technology. It was scaling very rapidly. We wanted more agile and innovative mindset so that we could be top five in the global space. Structurally, also, we wanted to be strong and become world class in the operational parameters, benchmark in sustainability and reduction in carbon footprint, employer of choice, leadership position in agile. These were the future, inputs which we got from the businesses, that this is where the future of Tata Steel would lie. Obviously, there were areas of improvement, whether it was collaboration, accountability, ownership. These were some of the shortcomings which came about based on the stakeholders' inputs taken from across the organization. And this is that there was an exercise which was done, that what will take us to drive all these, stretch interventions, whether we want to scale rapidly in technology or we want to be agile, we want to be employer of choice. We said that there were certain behaviors which needs to be, driven so that some of our shortcomings could be taken care of. So we said these are the four desired cultural behaviors which we thought that will drive the organization, will drive people in the organization, whether it was ownership, because we thought that we were lacking in ownership in quite a few businesses. There were issues related to collaboration. Our response time, as mentioned earlier, was not up to the mark. And obviously, different segments of workforce was coming into the organization. So people development or unleashing the potential of people. So these were the cultural behaviors we thought that were the critical ones which would change the way or mode of working for the organization. So what we did was we created a future readiness index, creating a baseline of the leaders. Especially we started off with the leadership team, starting from impact level 3 and upwards, and started doing this 360 degrees for all the executives to find out what their current baseline is, right? So based on there were descriptors for unacceptable, acceptable, and gold standard. Obviously, the objective was to bring as many people towards the gold standard, and each individual were mapped based on 360 degrees feedback, and people were identified that at what level they were. This was essentially to develop people in specific areas, whether it was collaboration or responsiveness or becoming a value creator or taking complete ownership. And what we did was we created a lot of video bites by senior leaders and created a repository of the gold standard behaviors based on the descriptors which were given, so that people could, hear them, look at them, understand what they mean by gold standard behaviors. And obviously, every HR processes had to be, linked. We linked it with PMS. I would be covering PMS also to some extent towards later part of my presentation. We started off tying up with the performance bonus. Approximately about 15 to 20% of the linkages was linked to the performance bonus. People who were at gold standard obviously were given higher bonus. People who were acceptable were given a little less bonus. This was started off with a very senior leadership levels, impact level 2 and upwards. But eventually, I think after that, they have started cascading it to the impact level 3 also. And obviously, development was the purpose. We wanted to develop so that more and more people could be identified at what level do they stand. And this was also linked to the movement of people in different roles, depending on what kind of a behavior they are exhibiting, whether it is acceptable or gold standard. And targets were taken by the respective vice presidents in their annual business plans also to increase the level of or percentage of gold standard, number of cases, number of executives or leadership team to move towards the gold standard behaviors. This was a very critical aspect. HR, along with the business leaders, we created a HR lab based on some of the very critical stakeholder inputs which we got, that we wanted to bring about cultural changes or the new mode of working. As I explained, the ownership, accountability. So we created a lab concept where we picked up, very consciously we picked up people both from the business and the HR team also to form the lab concept for all the four critical areas. One was how do we improve employee experience overall? What were the interventions which needs to be done in the career of employees? How does HR add value to the business? And obviously the cultural part. A new people vision was created, and this was a full-time task force for almost about 50-60% of the group who was representing a particular lab, and partly it was part-time also, right? So it was a hybrid kind of a thing, and it was based on a rotation basis. It was this particular lab was created almost about 3 to 4 years back, and I'm told it still continues because a lot of interventions have happened based on this. So people who were selected to be part of this lab were either full time or part time also, and there were many business leaders who were part of this labs, and they went around and interacted with a lot of people. What needs to be done differently for different segments of the workforce? So this was something which was actually appreciated by a lot of people in the organization because there was a very focused approach given towards these four critical components of the inputs which we got from different stakeholders. So based on the diagnostic, as I said, what were the top key level changes which uh, people wanted or the business wanted or the institution, that means, and the entire organization wanted. The entire organization wanted a lot of work needs to be done on agility and culture, the new way of working. The business said we want flexibility, we want value creation. Employees obviously said they want a different kind of an experience. They wanted trust in action. Whatever you're doing, that has to be implemented in the true spirit, or whatever experiences they are going through right from onboarding to separation and beyond. How do we give them a customer like experience? There were different segments of workforce. Obviously some wanted digital experience, some wanted face to face experience. So there was a mix of interventions which happened, which I would be slightly explaining more in details a subsequent slide. And the L&D piece is something which obviously is a very critical component of any employee who has to be retained or who has to be developed or who has to be prepared for future readiness. So a lot of work had happened during the particularly in this lab where, as far as career progression is concerned. Now let's look at some of the enablers which enabling interventions which happened in different areas. In agility, we created an agile way of working. So all projects which were taken up, this is basically a McKinsey model where you pick up a problem and break it into different pieces. It's called tickets and all those things. So you have a scrum master, you have a leader, and there is a specific time period, and you need to complete that, and there is a very clear cut outcome which is given. So this is a very with a lot of speed and agility, and to ensure that whatever you are doing with speed also is stable. uh, the projects were taken based on this model. A lot of synergy had happened in the structures itself, creation of one IT, one supply chain, those kind of a thing, and new modes of working. Like, there were areas where we felt that we don't require full-time people. There were positions were identified in different functions, that which are the areas or which are the roles which can be performed by gigs or full-time contract. There were positions which were very difficult to attract and fill up. They were not, especially for doctors, because it's an integrated steel plant. So we have doctors, we have pilots. Some retainership contract, schemes were brought in. Then all of us have heard about this absolute work from home and flexible work from home. This was a concept which was introduced, I think, just before COVID came in, and most of the non-operation areas, even in operations, the office setup people got the benefit of either working from absolute work from home and flexible work from home concept. This was something which was, I think, in my view, this is the first time which was introduced in a manufacturing setup of this size. And obviously, we created a lot of new material businesses, adjacent businesses. So we had to create a complete new structure of ensuring that how flexible that structure is. A lot of processes which gets implemented are fast enough and not the ones which continue in older organizations. There was a lot of work, as Rajesh also mentioned, for process simplification. We created a concept of shared services And we picked up four particular functions. One is HR, finance, procurement, and IT. And we identified all the transactional activities which were, manually being driven. So we identified all the transactional activities and transitioned it to the shared services entity so that they can digitalize it and, do it much better. We created a lot of bureaucracy busters. Obviously, we wanted to, clean up the process and make it much more agile. So we identified process through the AVO model, agile way of working, and people started looking at, which are the activities, whether they are required to be performed or not. Because over a period of time, a lot of things got added up in the organization across locations. So literally in the concept of jaruri hai kya ye wala particular activity, how do we eliminate that and clean up the process and make it much more agile? Obviously, it required a lot of digital intervention, which was taken up very strongly. As far as the culture is concerned, see, not every cultural behavior is bad. There are so many good practices, good policies which are there in the organization, which we wanted to continue because they have led us in good stead also. All of us have heard about the culture of joint consultation. We had a very good culture of safety improvement initiatives. So all these we wanted to nurture and assimilate so that all the newcomers who were joining, people who were joining from other organizations, should get onboarded to this particular culture, and obviously to institutionalize the new mode of working, the new behavioral cultural behaviors which we said we wanted to imbibe, or we wanted to people to become gold standards in some of these critical cultural behaviors so that they can prepare themselves or prepare the organizations for the future, and link it to different other HR processes, whether it was movement, rewards, growth. We also tied up with external stakeholders, whether it was campus, new hires, or customers, or our joint ventures, to institutionalize these concepts or these new cultural behaviors of ownership, collaboration, responsiveness, and people development, so that we don't see only within ourselves, right? Because there is within the ecosystem there are a lot of people who work for us directly or indirectly. So we wanted to connect with them and say that we want these cultural behaviors to be imbibed in their ecosystems as well.
Can you be specific that how did you that ABWAF and FW work from home in the manufacturing, except for office persons?
So it was largely for the office function, the corporate function. You are right. There are many functions where positions were identified, whether it is IT completely runs on absolute work from home till date, right?
Right, sir.
In procurement and even in HR. Obviously, if you take HR, see, HR business partners obviously were not absolute work from home or flexible work from home. These some of these positions were not identified to be absolute or flexible working. They were required to be at the shop floor. So there were some positions in operations also, like somebody who's working in the office, whether it is in planning or whichever areas, which is not directly connected with the operations and maintenance. Obviously, those positions were not identified, but majority of the positions which were in the non-core areas or the non-operation areas were identified, and either it was absolute work from home or flexible work from home. Flexible work from home is basically a hybrid model.
Right, sir. Right.
Right. Similarly, what did the business wanted? Business wanted flexibility. So we tried to redesign the structures for synergy. We created location specific because obviously there were quite a few policies which were cutting across all the businesses or across the company. But obviously, there were certain policies which required local nuances, whether it was giving an example of, say, raw materials, which requires a lot of intervention with respect to, retaining people or attracting people, families not wanting to stay in those locations. So we created bachelor accommodation concept or drive-in, drive-out concept in all our raw materials division, which still continues. New material business is something which we have set up in the company, where we wanted a complete different HR framework because that works on a very different business model. So we wanted to create certain different policies or different reward system or structures for the new businesses, because their ROIC is much faster than compared to any other, and it works more on on
Drive-in,
project
drive-out
kind of
policy.
testing.
Drive-in, drive-out policy.
Drive-in, drive-out policy is basically people who stay in or work in raw materials like, say, West Bokaro, Normandy, or
Yes,
uh,
sir.
Jharia. They prefer to keep their families in nearby cities. So we identified, some of the nearby cities in the vicinity of the mines, so that the family could shift there and these people could drive in, drive out. Obviously, they were not allowed to drive on their own, but we have made arrangements to pick them up and drop them over the weekends. And during the week, they could stay in bachelor accommodation.
Right.
We had a complete policy around that. And we started, there were a lot of attraction of people then in that case, because the bachelors who were getting married, they didn't wanted to bring their spouses there. And there were other things also, like, we wanted to, we created a concept of, step up, or there was some concept where we started giving, some kind of an assignment to these spouses also, so that we could attract youngsters coming into the raw material.
Right. Okay, sir.
Yeah. Other is the digital intervention. Obviously, business wanted data, business wanted analytics, because enough of gut feel we have been giving to the business, but then business understands numbers, business understands analytics, right? So HR got involved in understanding the workforce analytics, creating data, and giving insights to take very proper decision making, which happens during the operations of the business. Uh, Even the sentiment analysis of Bodometer, which is largely based on real-time feedback of people, whether it is event-based or even if it is on a regular basis, we give feedback of how the employees engaged or satisfied or not based on real-time basis. And obviously, the connected workforce is something which was much talked about during the COVID period also, and it still continues, where we created a lot of digital intervention to give RFID or give identification to people, and they are digitally connected to know where they are working, which hazardous areas they are going or not going, or they're supposed to go or not supposed to go. So this was something which was, I think, it's become now quite robust and working pretty well. And obviously the radical value creation, because HR wanted, or the business wanted HR to create value to the business, because if you call them HR business partners, you have to, HR needs to understand the businesses, they need to contribute to the improvements of the bottleneck areas. So HR created a lot of, along with the business, we created a lot of cross-functional projects based on production quality, call delivery, the PQCDSM model, and some of these value creation projects were taken up by the HR along with the business. And there are many stories where HR got involved and started contributing to improvement in those bottleneck areas, in the operational areas and maintenance areas. Lastly, the employees. Obviously, employees said employee experience is something which was very critical, because that is moments of truth matter a lot to the employees, especially people in the current context where they have everything on a laptop or a mobile, and we wanted to create a customer kind of an experience. A lot of work had happened to improve the critical touch points, right from onboarding to separation, and including beyond. So what we did was we created a lot of digitally enabled self-managed services, so that they don't need to look up to the policy, or they don't need to. A lot of FAQs were created around the policies, and with various permutation and combination, so that they could key in their keywords, and from the chatbot they could identify that what needs to be done. And this is something which was initially not very acceptable to the people who were seniors and had spent a lot of time, or not that digitally savvy compared to the youngsters or Gen Z. But over a period of time, people started appreciating that this is something which is really helpful, and this is something which needs to be driven across the organization, where more and more such transactional type of queries could be addressed at the today mobile is available and everything Siri answers, or you Google it. It's on those lines that we self-enable these people to an extent which is possible. Obviously, not missing the human touch point, human interaction. That is something which needs to be continued. That is why I mentioned about the manager connect. That is something which continues very strongly, and we keep improving on that. And including the campus connect programs and managing redundancies by creating a talent bank. Next is on the capability development. Yes, a lot of work which has happened. Tata Steel basically works on the 70-20-10 concept. 70% of the capability development happens out of experience, where in other organizations also a lot of work happens on tenured posting, action learning projects. There's a very robust succession planning which happens for all the critical positions which have been identified. We have a critical identification policy framework in place for all the critical positions. No individual is indispensable or should not be considered indispensable to a particular position. He or she also needs to grow, has his or her own aspirations to move from one function to another function. So a lot of work which happened around that in the capability space also. Giving exposure was the 20% of the effort which is pushed, where this is something we introduced and which was appreciated by large number of people, especially this is the AI enabled step up for talent marketplace. This I'll just explain very briefly on this. This is basically a AI enabled platform where individual supposing working, I'm just giving an example, somebody is working in say procurement, wants to move to marketing and sales, right? But he or she doesn't have the qualification to move to marketing and sales straight away. He will never get selected when he or she applies in an open job posting or internal job postings, because he doesn't have the qualification, doesn't have the experience. Through this platform, what happens is, if somebody has the flair, even if he or she doesn't have the qualification or experience, or has the flair to groom himself, this is basically a self managed career planning for individuals. There are a lot of projects which gets hosted on the site, and somebody who wants to do a project on marketing and sales, or take up some mentor to understand, or get a more deeper insights into that particular function. So over a period of time, he or she is preparing himself or herself to move into marketing and sales also, despite having not the qualification or experience. So we have a good database of talent marketplace based on a lot of people who have done projects or shown interest and worked on short-term or part-time assignments in marketing and sales. I'm just giving an example. Likewise, people from operations also wanting to move to marketing and sales or HR, they look up to the side. There are some projects which are hosted, and if they have a flair, they get picked up, and they get experience based on getting involved in some of these projects. And obviously, the mobility policy is something which got revamped totally. JRCP has its own limitation, the job rotation career planning. Obviously, this particular concept has been there in the organization, but this alone was not serving the purpose. So obviously, putting people on deputation, secondment, there are a lot of inorganic growth opportunities which was coming, people moving from one location. So we revamped the entire mobility policy, both within the country in India operations and people who were being considered for postings overseas also. Then we started, obviously, I'm told SAIL also has done a lot of work on coaching. We also did coaching through the same, I think, organization. And we started this reverse mentoring concept, and a lot of cross-functional projects which was done to take care of the exposure part. As far as education is concerned, we focused on a lot of new initiatives which have happened. SOE is basically the School of Excellence, which I can explain a little bit more in detail towards the end if somebody wants it. This is basically just to give a snapshot. We identified some critical particular skills which needs to be developed, and we need to create bench strength. We need to develop people based on that. So it was largely from the operations and maintenance area. We identified areas where people could either self-nominate or get nominated by the department or the division. And this is a very unique concept, and we have already created a School of Excellence for over 100 such critical skills in the organization. And I think it is still growing here. So this is something which where individuals self-nominate, and they have to go through 3 levels: a basic level, intermediate level and advanced level, and there are a lot of action learning projects which they need to do. They get certified, and they become platinum holders, and those who become platinum holders get the opportunity to become faculty also. So this concept has really picked up well in the organization, and there are a lot of e-learning modules which I'm sure many of the organization have introduced, largely catering to different segments of the workforce, because focusing largely on the classroom training has a limited outcome. So this was something which was introduced and across the organization and different locations also. Obviously tying up with business and technical schools that can teach schools. And we revamped the entire directed learning. Directed learning is basically the study leave concept. So we completely revamped the directed learning, and we gave opportunity to people in many of the institutes which were not listed earlier. There is a proper policy around this, and there are committees for technical directed learning and for managerial directed learning. And it has a concept of a self-nominated also and company nominated also. So this is something which we worked on. On the career progression, as I mentioned earlier also, this entire mobility policy, internal external policy got completely revamped, and including for the blue collar workforce, because there were a lot of opportunities which were given to blue collar workforce. There were quite a few diploma holders who were really good, and we created a new level for them in the executive cadre. And but the best part of the opportunity for blue collar workforce that we created a bridge program for them before they could appear for any written test or and clear the managerial assessment programs. So we created a bridge program for technical as well as managerial, and then they were subjected to test, and people got selected. And there are people from blue collar who are now holding mid level positions also in the organization. On the inclusive growth, obviously there's our target was to be 25% in 2025. I don't know where we stand currently. This was an area where a lot of work has happened over the years, tying up with various organizations, advocacy. A lot of policy interventions were brought in, and people, most importantly, is the sensitization of the people in the organization. This was the key intervention for bringing about inclusive growth in the diversity, equity, and inclusion post position.
Sir, excuse me, sir, what is take two?
Take two is basically where there are spouses, youngsters especially, who are qualified, but they are not part of Tata Steel, right? Their spouses are working in Tata Steel. This was largely to take care of the retention part, where the spouses could be a male also, could be a female also, right? Anything.
Yes.
Largely females who are housemakers, but they are qualified and they have not got into Tata Steel. So they could take up projects based on their experience and qualification on short-term assignments for 6 months, 1 year, and over a period of time. And if they are good, they are being taken on board also of the company.
Okay.
So
This is
take
basically mine locations only.
not necessarily raw materials. It was initially started off with raw materials because attraction and retention and attraction was an issue in raw materials. But
Right.
over a period of time, it got cascaded or extended horizontally to other locations, including Jamshedpur.
Okay, right.
This was something I think which was the most critical part, because what get measured correctly gets done correctly, right? So this is something we had a very robust performance management system, but obviously there were a lot of gaps or there were some leakages or some whatever you call it. We wanted to strengthen this entire PMS system. So we looked at the existing system and saw that we did a lot of benchmarking exercises. What are the best practices which are happening in the space, not necessarily only in the manufacturing, but in other service industries also, because this is something which really clears the complete role deliverables of the individual, what he or she is expected to perform. It brings in a lot of clarity, what kind of a goal he or she pursues during the year, both in terms of lag and lead indicators, There are a lot of seeding work which gets done by individuals in the performance management system, because there are so many targets which individual takes in the performance management system, uh, is not necessarily that particular year specific. It could be for the next 3 years. But when you work backward, there are certain seeding work also which needs to be done. So this was something which we said that no, we want to further strengthen this, and I'll just take you through what we did. Yeah. So what we did was, in order to align individual goals to the organizational and divisional goals, we made it compulsory that you have to pick up 4 organizational goals uh, from the system, which would be common across for everyone, right? The targets would vary, but the goal itself can be picked up, whether it was cost or productivity or in the specific areas. So obviously, each level will have their own levels of target. But if cost is the apex goal, then it has to be cascaded across the organization. So 4 goals to be picked up by apex by default, and 4 from the division. So total of 8 goals have to be identified based on organizational and divisional goals. And there has to be some vertical cascade from the organization or divisional goals. And most importantly is the intervention which we brought about is to take a collaborative goals. What was happening was, since we wanted to drive this particular behavior of collaboration, we said no, every individual in the organization, whether it was in senior executive in IL2 or IL3 or IL4 or whatever level it was, you have to take a collaborative goal, minimum 2 collaborative goals, wherever interdependencies of achievement is there, whether operation maintenance, HR versus business. So you have to pick up 2 collaboration goals out of the 8 goals. And in addition to the goals, there were project goals, both apex and non-apex, right? So you could pick up apex goals, which are auto-populated. You want to be part of that. You want to directly, indirectly pick up something which would eventually lead to the apex goal. Obviously, it has to be discussed and finalized with the reporting manager also. And there would be non-apex goals where which largely is divisional specific. So at any given point in time, 2 minimum project goals had to be identified and picked up by individuals. So what did we change? Obviously, goal setting, as I said, we focused on the collaborative goals. We wanted to focus on the how. How is an individual achieving it, right? Rather than achieving it by means, whatever means, by hook or by crook. So the how part was important, and what are the lead and lag indicators, and how many uh, seeding strategies also which the individual is taking, or especially for the senior level, so that the larger purpose of being future ready in the organization is also taken care of. So goal setting itself was a very robust process, very discussed and deliberated along with the managers, and all the alignments were checked by the HR team, and along with the business, to ensure that there is complete alignment with the organizational and the divisional targets. The governance mechanism, earlier we used to have one-on-one conversation where what the quality of conversation was not being assessed. So we thought that no, we need to strengthen the governance mechanism. So there were divisional town halls, dedicated workshops were conducted. There was a complete audit across the division to ensure that the right kind of goals are being taken, and the quality of conversation which the superior is having along with the subordinate is also monitored. And each individual was allowed to modify their goals during the second manager conversation. And the last part is the development plan, sharper focus on the development plan, and mandatory usage of the 3 model which I explained earlier, that is experience, education, and exposure, in that 70-20-10 basis. The frequency of conversation, earlier we just had one mid-year review for goal. We said, no, this is not serving the purpose. We wanted to have at least 2 manager conversation, both for trying to help the individual bring him or her on track on development of individuals. And we also introduced the concept of having conversation with stakeholders for career development. Stakeholders could be their peers, their subordinates, their seniors, or in other functions also to give inputs on which are the areas where that individual can further improve, especially when a person is getting groomed for, say, mid-level or entry-level leadership level. The quality of conversation, as I mentioned earlier, there was no mechanism to monitor whether the conversation has really happened or has happened with the purpose or with the intent for which this entire exercise is taking place. So we started measuring that to ensure that the quality of conversations between the manager and his team members also improve. And giving the feedback was, mid-year review में feedback होता भी था नहीं भी होता था. So we said no, we will create a mobile app based real-time feedback of somebody who's performed or completed a particular target. What is the feedback which the superior would like to give, or even the individual can ask the superior, give me a feedback. But it was largely the manager who was giving feedback on a real-time basis on a mobile app, which is integrated with the entire performance management system in the Talent Pro platform. Rating of divisional performance was not the criteria earlier, so we said no, the respective divisions rating also needs to be considered. So there was a concept of the gate opener, where based on the performance of the division, the CEO and MD would rate the division, based on which the rating kitty or the bonus kitty would get decided. There was a lot of rigor in the talent reviews and the calibration, because talent review is something which has been there for quite some time, and it has become really robust. What we introduced in the talent review exercise was to bring in some cross-functional team members in the talent reviews, so that each individual performance during the mid-year and in the final PMS cycle gets discussed, deliberated based on all the parameters set based on the performance contracting. The next part was, obviously, a lot of people were hesitant on giving bottom ratings under or underutilized. It was not being utilized. There is obviously all organizations, including Tata Steel, we used to follow the bell curve, and 5 or 10%, I don't remember what percentage, some percentage of people have to be identified as low performers, because at the end of the day, it's a relative performance, right? And there are people who could be because see, if you don't identify underperformance, uh, people will not improve. The objective is not to take out a person from the system because he or she is not performing. Yes, consistently, if the individual, despite those interventions or improvement plans, if the individual is not performing, there has to be a process of his or her exit also, and that is something which operates across the organization, and we monitor that. But this was something, one area where we said uh, having difficult conversation or giving feedback to performers, non-performers, largely non-performers, or who are not performing to the expected level, had to be identified, and their performance improvement plan had to be made, and their performance had to be monitored over a period of time. And the focus on IDP is the individual development plan, gets discussed based on the three model. So overall, the rating is on a 4-point scale and very robust talent reviews, as I mentioned. We also brought about a lot of improvements in the appeal process, because every individual may or may not get satisfied, right? So there is an appeal process, and earlier appeal used to go to the senior most person in that particular function. Today, appeal doesn't go to that person. Appeal goes to completely different person in a different function, senior person. And now it has become completely mobile app enabled. So it is on a real time basis. Just to give you a snapshot of some of the progressive, or I don't know whether you call it progressive, or some of the policies which have really appreciated or helped the organization, is the step up AI powered talent marketplace, which I mentioned. And we started this concept of reverse mentoring and reverse coaching, especially for people who are being groomed for leadership level, and first frontline leadership level, and obviously the higher leadership level. L&D I have mentioned already, and FCF and ECBS is basically the functional competency framework for executives, and the ECBS is the enterprise capability building system for the non-executive. That is the blue collar workforce for skill assessment and proficiency assessment. So their growth also, including for the blue collar also, the growth happens based on the proficiency level improvements based on ECBS. So that is also one of the criteria for their movement within the cluster. D&I have already mentioned. Work-life balance, sabbatical is something which has been there for quite some time, but there are some policy interventions which happened based on the requirements from the youngsters, which we introduced, and the 5-day work week, which I think most of us are well aware of that. On the work model, yes, we created a new entity. New entity is something which some of you, I'm sure, would have heard it. One is largely for the maintenance areas, operation and maintenance areas, electrical and mechanical maintenance. We have created a new organization, and that is for the technical area. And for the non-technical area, it's still in the incubation stage. But for the technical area, the entity has already been set up. So they have already started recruiting, and this new organization has already started, firming up. We created a gig policy. We identified positions in the organization where gig model could be operated or fixed term contract could be taken, especially in areas where the cycle time of project work is there, or we don't need people for a longer period. Those kind of positions were identified for FTC. And redundancy is something which is an ongoing thing. We created a talent bank. Obviously, there are a lot of redundancies which keep happening in all the organization, including in Tata Steel. And we created a very healthy and very open and transparent talent bank concept in Tata Steel, where people who were redundant, not necessarily not performing, they were very good performers also, but they went to the talent bank, and from there, any other function who wanted to fill up new positions or fill up their vacant or positions, but before going to the outside market, they had to look at some of these people and pick up from there. So a lot of people got opportunity to be, picked up in functions which were different from where they were working. Second innings is something which is an outcome of not necessarily PMS, but we wanted part of the restructuring exercise where people took the second innings and exited with a very handsome package, which we cannot disclose here, but we can discuss more in detail separately. And on the 4 Rs which we follow, there's a complete framework to address this. How do we restructure? How do we reskill, redeploy? And lastly is the recruit. Before we recruit, we have to complete this exercise based on that framework. Yeah. So that's it from my side, and I hope it was useful. Thank you.
Sir, how do you measure specific measurements for HR people? Which are operations I can understand, sir. But how about HR people? How do you measure, create, as you say, goals, measure those for performance of the HR fraternity, as I can say?
So if you look at any performance contract of HR people, right? So it has to be aligned to the business.
Right, sir.
And there are certain business targets, like supposing, let's take, for example, an HRBP in, say, steel or raw materials, right? So there are certain divisional goals also which gets cascaded to the HR BPs who are there, posted there in the departments. So they need to also take certain goals or certain targets which are linked to the business.
Right, sir.
Right, and then they have to take certain collaborative goals also with the business.
Right.
So very, very sharp, very specific targets which they need to take. When they take it from the division, it has to be from the operation, from the business where they are posted, and also from the functional, that is the corporate HR also, where company-wide company-wide deployment is happening in the organization. So they pick up few from the corporate HR, some from the business, and obviously there are very specific targets which are given with timelines and very sharper targets. We need to see a few examples which probably I can show separately.
I'm basically talking about the lower persons, in the initial stage, not the higher people.
Correct. So you're talking of the freshers, right? The management trainees.
Yes, and in HR area.
Correct. Correct. So HR area also, the individual, whether a person has completed the training period and joined as a HR business partner or in the corporate HR, Obviously, there are certain specific areas where he or she needs to work on during that particular year, and it gets cascaded based on wherever that person gets placed. So for them also, those targets may not be very stringent or something, but obviously we need to, gradually, sensitize them so that, and obviously there's a lot of handholding which happens for these youngsters also by the seniors on how to achieve that. And some of them are really excited to achieve some of those along with their superiors' guidance. So a lot of career conversation. So what you rightly mentioned is even with, not only in HR, even management trainees in operations, marketing, and sales, wherever they are joining, there's a lot of hand holding which needs to be done, a lot of career conversation which needs to be done. So a lot of the manager index which we measure for the managers who are monitoring, young group of people who have joined in the last 1 or 2 years. So what kind of a conversation he or she is having, what kind of a path he or she is showing to that particular individual. So there's a lot of interaction which happens, and based on that confidence, uh, you know, they help the individuals to achieve their targets.
Right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vivalmi, sir. And it was really very deeply insightful and a very candid reflections on the Tata Steel journey. I already mentioned in the chat box, and few of the queries are also coming. If you have any query, you can also directly seek the insights from sir directly.
Sure. Anybody is free to call me up separately also. You can share my mobile number, and they want to discuss and understand more in detail in the interest of best interest of time which we have today. We just have, I think, couple of minutes left. I'm so sorry. I have just surpassed. I should have given 5-10 minutes more. But if there's anybody who wants more detailed insights and understand the how part, how we've been able to drive that, I think what is something which is visible, right? But how it has been done is the story which people would like to have more deeper insights in. And they can always connect with me. I'm available. Right now, I'm in Himachal and
Sir, we
enjoying the
have few
nice weather.
questions in the chat. Can we take it, sir?
Yeah,
Sharon?
sure.
Can I read it or?
Yeah, if you can read it.
Okay, I will, sir. So, Chandramouli sir wanted to know what is the system for accounting contract labor in Tata Steel from a principal employer perspective.
Counting contract labor or accounting?
Accounting contract labor.
So
So, yeah, sir, if sir is connected, sir, you may.
How
yeah,
do you
if you can
account for it?
just elaborate on that, what exactly is he looking for?
Fine. This is basically a very good evening, Mr. Vimani, and thank you for giving so much of insights on how Tata Steel goes on. And we pretty much in SAIL actually like to know what's happening over there. One area where Tata Steel has done very nice is basically about the contract labors and also about the outsourcing models they're having. So I like to know that how do you account for example, if you have a contract labor account of say whatever numbers are there. So to how many you are basically responsible as a principal employer. For example, if you have a headcount of employees X and a headcount of Y, so do you? We heard that in some of the outsourced contracts, you don't count that contract labor belonging to on you as a principal employer, rather than it is something the responsibility of that particular contract or that particular outsource agency. So we want clarity on this. How do we actually go about these particular aspects?
See, any contractor who's working in our operating locations in our premises, it becomes a responsibility whether it is directly engaged or indirectly. There would be job contracts where you don't have a control on the numbers, right? So you want a job to be executed. But end of the day, they are engaging people, and you need to monitor their availability, their presence, because for two reasons. One is obviously the safety reasons, and other is whether they are paying the right kind of compensation to each of these people. Because end of the day, the principal employer continues to remain with the Tata Steel, right? Whether directly or indirectly. There are organizations where you have, especially in downstream areas, where you have completely outsourced your downstream business to third party, right? They are managing a separate factory and everything. But there are certain norms, the certain way of working, the value system we would like them to follow based on the Tata Steel, because they are representing Tata Steel. So that is something which gets monitored and gets implemented. But if they are working in our premises, obviously it becomes the responsibility both in respect of safety, both in respect of the compensation they pay, and they form part of our connected workforce platform.
So you mean to say that within the broad definition is within the premises of Tata Steel, something like that?
Correct.
Or, for example, if you have outsourced certain aspects, for example, Tata Utilities, which you are having, definitely you won't count the contract, the people who are there in Tata Utilities to be on the contract role of Tata Steel, isn't it?
Correct.
So is there any models, for example, within the plant also inside, for example, certain areas we have totally outsourced through on a job contracts. Of course, job contracts again have a built-in responsibility of the contract labor on the principal employer. But what are the models actually where having the twin objective of reducing the contract labor at the same time increasing the outsourcing? So that's actually how do you go about it within the plant also?
See, there are two things which you are asking. One is the job contract, where we say that we have given you a particular job, you need to execute that, right? And we pay you based on that, whether you engage 5 people or 10 people or 20 people. Those discussions happen at the time of finalizing a contract, right? So the numbers, once the contract is decided, we don't discuss on the numbers. We agree on the execution of a particular task which has been, or the jobs based on the contract which has been given. But there are jobs which requires I would not say supply, but I would say providing technical support or technical services a particular area. uh, Obviously, if they are working whether it is a job contract or if they are providing technical resource to a particular area, and if they are working in our plant premises, we need to ensure that they are safe, their safety is taken care of, their amenities are taken care of, their compliances are taken care of.
I think in sum up, it is the ultimate
Correct.
responsibility of the principal employers.
Absolutely. Because see,
Yeah.
within the factory also, there are factories which have been where it completely outsourced work is happening. So there is a factory within a factory also, right? So within Tata Steel also, there are organizations where they are registered as a separate factory, because
We also have a similar setup in some plants.
Correct. See, end of
So
the day, it is the responsibility of the
it is.
principal employer, because they are working overall in our ecosystem or our premises. So
Yes.
that becomes our responsibility. There are jobs which have been completely outsourced and given to third parties, especially in downstream areas like cutting of edges or whatever work which has been given, and they have a separate factory, right? And it's outside. They don't come under the premises of Tata Steel, any of the operating locations. So they have a separate setup. Everything is separate. So we don't monitor what happens there. But if there is an unsafe work or unsafe activity which is happening, and if there is a fatality, Tata Steel gets concerned, right? Because they are, end of the day, they are representing Tata Steel. They are getting associated with Tata Steel. They may not be directly accountable as a principal employer, but they are responsible to ensure that they follow certain practices, both in terms of value system, both in terms of safety practices. So all those interventions of giving them inputs, training them, all those things happen, even though we don't
Ultimately,
control them
Tata Steel
directly.
is responsible. That is plain and clear, and we take the responsibility. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a few more questions. It's very difficult to choose them, but we'll take a couple of those. I will request you to answer in a short, sir, considering the paucity of time. Again,
Sure.
it's a very challenge, sir. Is there any compulsory shedding 5% lowest performer in Tata Steel?
Compulsory shedding.
Of 5% lowest performer.
It is recommended, right?
It is recommended. Okay.
It is sometimes it may be 5%, it may be 4%. There could be areas where it is 6% also. But the objective is not to go strictly by percentage. Idea is 5% is an indicator, right? So you have to work around that. There might be uh, some instance where it could be zero also, right? But then you have to rework and identify at least one or two people at least. So it can range from say 2% to 5% or 6% also. So this 5% is not sacrosanct. 5% is more of a recommended kind of a percentage. The objective being that people need to have that mindset of identifying wheat from the chaff, or people need to understand that it is a relative, comparison of people at the end of the year. But there might be instances where in a function, but then you need to justify that everybody is an average performer and nobody is
Thank you,
there
sir.
in a particular year,
Thank you, sir.
right?
For those which questions we have not taken, I will share the contact number of sir. And
Sure.
to moving ahead, I would now request Sanjay Das sir, CGM HR L&D, for summarizing of the proceedings, because as the current stage, sale is also in a similar stage where we will be looking forward for the major HR transformation exercise. We have also engaged a consultant. I'm sure sir will also throw light on the summary of the proceedings also, and how also extending the vote of thanks to for this session. Sanjay sir, over to you, sir, please.
Rajesh, and once again, I'd like to thank Virmani Saab for giving his time and uh, sharing his insights so candidly and with such insight. This was very topical for us because right now, as we are having this interaction, we are actually undergoing a lot of diagnostics phase discussion with our consultant for our HR transformation there. And it was also very interesting to see that the first slide that you showed when you were talking about assessing where we are and what are the issues and where do we want to be, are the questions that we are grappling with right now. And it's the same journey. So you have given us a prelude to the kind of journey that we'll undergo going forward. You shared a lot of interesting things with us, which could be good pointers for us going forward. Issues like policy harmonization. What is the intent and what are the policies to back it up, and are they really aligned or not? Because otherwise, sometimes we have a few policies addressing some core issues and some issues not getting addressed at all. You also gave us a very interesting framework of assessing how future ready an organization is in terms of collaboration, to responsiveness, and the methodology in terms of doing it easily and figuring out where we stand and what do we need to take forward. We also got a very interesting perspective on how segregating the various different kinds of challenges that HR faces. There are some operational challenges, there are some out of the box challenges. There are some challenges which involve engagement with people. So, the different labs that you had, like the Blue Sky Lab or the Experience Lab or As You Like It Lab. So, this way of involving people full time into creative thinking, using different labs and creating new solutions was something that is really very interesting for us. Some very simple, of course, they appear simple in hindsight. Things like bureaucracy busters, simple questions like "Zaruri hai kya?" And converting them into operating mechanisms for really DVDing our systems was something very wonderful. We had a lot of insights on how we can take it forward in capability development using the 70-20-10 pattern and the operating mechanisms that you had. I mean, conceptually, we all agree on 70-20-10, but how do you operationalize it was something that we found very interesting. And given time, maybe going forward in some other interaction, we'll discuss more about AI-enabled step-up programs and talent management. That's an area that I think is something very interesting for us. We will also be discussing further on the schools of excellence, but you gave us a good idea of what basic intent and operating mechanism is. And the importance of having a data-driven system where you have a ECPS and an FCS, which can be used to identify objectively how good people are and what we need to do further. That was something very interesting. I had some questions about the talent review process, but you clarified a lot of things about how it is a much more open, dialogue-driven process, where it's not just between two individuals. It's within a large group, and they refine it through a lot of processes. It's something that we can again explore further. And I appreciated the point about 4 hours that you use in terms of rejuvenating the organization when you said restructure, reskill, redeploy, recruit. So all those aspects that you're working on, giving a holistic perspective on how do we manage the entire HR process. beautiful processes, beautiful insights, and like any good interaction, at one level we are completely satisfied, and at another level there are so many pointers for us to really explore each one of those pathways in depth going forward. So you're left as hungry for more, and then that is the beauty of a good interaction, where uh, whatever has been shared with coherence, integration, and everything is clear once you have explained it. But at the same time, we realize that we have just touched the surface, and there is so much more to it that we can still dive deeper into, and we look forward to that. So once again, thank you, sir, for such a wonderful interaction,
Thank
and
you
we
so
look forward to more such interaction, more deeper dives on those subjects. And I'd also like to thank all my participants for their time and their active participation. And we look forward to more such interactions. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Sanjay
Thank you
sir.
so much, Sanjay ji.
And
Thank you, Rajesh ji. Thank you so much.
thank you, Sanjay sir. Thank you,
It
Sanjay
was
sir.
my privilege. Thank
And
you.
thank you all the participants. Thank you all the seniors for joining. And as I mentioned in chat box, sir, for those who joined late, the link of the recording of the session for the past Antardrishti sessions will also be available on the e-Abhigyan. So please log in if you want to have the review of this session or the previous sessions. Thank you all, sir. Thank you for joining, and we'll look forward for the next session. Meet again. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajesh ji. Thank you so much.